You need to make difficult decisions to grow your business and do what's best for it, but that's often easier said than done. I candidly share my recent experiences making hard decisions so that you can learn from my thought process and avoid mistakes that I've made in the past. If you listen to episode 201 of the Recloseted Radio podcast, then you'll know that I have ambitious goals to 5x the business this year. And I talked about in that episode how the business just needs what it needs. So if you need to let go of a team member, if you need to fire a contractor, or you need to do something that's difficult, it just needs to be done. And you need to let go of your feelings, let go of your ego. And that can be a lot of the times easier said than done. So I wanted to do this episode and get really candid and real with you around some of the difficult decisions I've had to make in my business, my thought process going through it, what I've learned, mistakes I've made, so that hopefully you can take some of these learnings and lessons and incorporate them seamlessly into your own lives and into your careers. So I'm going to walk you through 3 things in particular. So the first one is going to be a failed product launch. The second one is going to be all the tea on firing team members. The second one is going to be firing team members. And the last one is going to be all the tea on my $10,000 mistake. So without any further ado, let's dive in because this is going to be a very juicy episode. Let's start with products. I often talk about on the Recloseted Radio podcast and on our YouTube channel how you need to take a customer first approach. I talk about it all the time, and hopefully you're sick of me saying it. But the reason I say it so much is because I didn't do that when I first started, and it really bit me in the butt. And what happened was when I was first starting out and trying to figure out what products and services I wanted to offer, I didn't fully and properly do the market research that I should have, that I now make my clients do, because if they don't, I don't want them to end up like me. But anyways, I talked casually to a few slow fashion founders and I figured out their pain points and their challenges. And then I assumed a bunch of things in between, like price points, the content, and the curriculum they wanted. And I just went full out because I just wanted to do something and I wanted to put something out there. And I knew at the time a lot of people wanted to start their own brand, but they didn't have the right resources and support. So I really just ran with that. But that is so generic and that is so big. And you really do want to get quite specific when you're trying to build out a product and a service. So my idea at the time was to launch a bunch of mini courses and package it all together into one overall academy. I called it the Conscious Apparel Academy, and it was the very first thing I ever launched. And when I launched it, after I spent 6 months on it, there were crickets. And I was devastated because, in my opinion, I was like, oh my God, I spent half a year working on this. I talked to so many people. At the time, I think it was maybe like 5 people. And I just was so crushed when nobody bought it. And I remember being really depressed and really sad and wallowed in everything for a couple of weeks. And then I picked myself back up and I really thought through, why did this happen? And I came to the conclusion that I didn't fully validate my product and I didn't really fully do the market research. It was really a half-baked process. And for this validation process, like when you're validating your product, that is so important. You'd want to spend the amount of time and efforts required to do it properly. So I really went back to the drawing board because instead of trying to push this product, even though I spent half a year on it, I really needed to call my losses and realize this is a sunk cost and start anew. And a lot of the times our egos won't let us do that. We'll be like, oh my God, I invested so much time, energy, money, or whatever else into this and it's not working. But you sometimes need to cut your losses and call it what it is. So when you realize there's nothing you can do and there's nothing that can be done, you need to go back to the drawing board and you need to accept that. So I went back to the drawing board and this time I did it right. I did the exact customer first approach that I get all my clients to do now and I talk about all the time on the podcast. But I interviewed and chatted with 50 plus inspiring slow fashion founders, and then I did a survey with hundreds of them and I gathered all of that data to make sure I had enough statistically significant data, and I co-created something with them. And I realized that there were other courses and programs out there to help people launch a brand, but they weren't focused on building a profitable and long-lasting business. And I really wanted to address that gap in the market because I interviewed quite a lot of people who went through other courses and programs, but I realized that they lacked a lot of business fundamentals and they didn't have the foundation that was set up to help them successfully scale. So I wanted to do something and leverage my strong business background to help founders be successful and take a very business and profit first approach. And that birthed the Launch Your Brand program, which is now our signature program. It's 12 months long and it takes founders from idea to successful, profitable launch. And we help founders build a profitable business in there. We don't help them just build expensive hobbies where you have a beautiful sweater or you have a beautiful pair of pants or really cool jacket, but when you launch it, you don't want to have crickets and end up like in the situation I had. So I am really proud of LYB, and it's the second iteration of my originally failed product, but sometimes you just need to tweak things a little bit and get that market research and that data. Spots for LYB filled up in 48 hours last time, but we release a couple new spots every month to our waitlist. So you can enter a waitlist to be notified if you are launching a brand this year and you want to work together. And while you're on the waitlist, you get a ton of free resources. I never send any spam or anything like that, only pure value like this podcast episode. So you can go to recloseted.com/LYB if you want to check it out and enter a waitlist. But that was kind of high level the experience. And there are 3 lessons from this that I really want to pull out and have you take away. So the first one is the importance of the customer first approach. I talk about this all the time on the podcast, but essentially you want to identify who your ideal customer is. You want to get as specific as possible. And then you need to understand them inside and out through market research, surveys, interviews, whatever avenues you can get your hands on. But you want to understand their pain points and their problems and their challenges so that you can develop a product that addresses it. After that, you want to start to brainstorm some solutions with them. The key is to do it with them and not just lock yourself in a room and try to figure out what they may want. This is the mistake I originally made, so you really want to make sure you're co-creating that solution. You want to validate the product, and once someone has told you they are so excited about it, they can't wait to give you their credit card information, then and only then do you proceed and actually make it. So you want to take that customer first approach. Think about your customer at the crux of all of this and only make products once you've validated it so that you don't fall into my trap. And so the second lesson is validating your product. And it is so important to spend the time and the energy and the resources required to do this properly. It takes a lot of work, but this is important work you must do upfront so that you don't have to quite literally kill yourself trying to sell something that no one wants. There's nothing worse than trying to sell something that no one wants and no one is buying. So validate your product and do this really important work upfront. And then last but not least, the third and final lesson in this example is around knowing when to cut your losses. Don't keep spending time and energy into something that's not working. Really check your ego and do something else that will actually get you to your goals. In this process, though, you do want to make sure you capture all of your learnings and all of your takeaways so that you can take it into everything you do moving forward. The next hard decision example I want to go through is firing or letting go of team members. Over the years, I have learned a lot about hiring and managing people. And like I mentioned in episode 201, where I talked about how I'm going to 5x the business this year, I broke down how the business at the end of the day just needs what the business needs. So the work needs to be done regardless of who does it. It's either you or someone else. And I've had experiences with amazing team members and some not so great ones. And if you want a hiring episode, I could probably do something like that. So just leave a comment on this YouTube video. If you're not watching on YouTube, make sure you subscribe. Our YouTube channel is just Recloseted on YouTube, and you can see my face and guest faces. But anyways, if you want to see a hiring episode, comment on the YouTube video, let me know. But I'm going to give you 2 examples of times when it didn't work out and what I learned from it, because some of these stories are wild. So I had a situation a couple years ago in which I didn't let go of a team member and I ended up getting ghosted by them in the middle of a launch. Cannot make this shit up. So the story is I kind of got catfished from a capability and skill set perspective. I wanted to hire someone super capable and someone that could take on more of a strategy role so that I could take a step back. And so I was willing to pay them a high hourly rate because I wanted this person to do strategy and be able to run on their own. And it didn't start out too bad. They were really eager to learn, and I do have around like a 3 to 6 month grace period where I am heavily invested in spending my time and my energy in training someone. And so I do understand things take time to kind of pick up. But even after that 6 month period, like things were falling through the cracks, things would get missed, deadlines would not be met without a heads up, et cetera, et cetera. And this went on for over a year. And sometimes it's not obvious that someone isn't bad because they're not, they're just not messing up royally, but their quality of work just isn't the best. And you feel like you always have to watch over them. And they're definitely not a star performer. But when they're in that murky middle, it can be hard to justify parting ways because you need someone and they help you. And it's a lot of work to find someone new. So anyways, it got to the point where I didn't address it because I was avoiding it. And because I was avoiding it and this person didn't really know, I built up a lot of resentment because every time something would get missed or something wasn't done properly or incorrectly, it would just add fuel to the fire. And it just, it's not that person's fault at all. It is my fault because I should have taken accountability and addressed it with them up front. So one day I decided enough was enough, and I decided to half address it, in my opinion. I didn't fully address it because I didn't have the gumption to do that, but I half addressed it. So I told that person that they could stay on or they could leave, no hard feelings either way, but the hourly rate for the role was going to decrease because based on their current output and based on how much strategic work and how much oversight and management that I still need to put in, I just felt like I was overpaying essentially. And going back to my point around the business needs what it needs, like it's not fair for the business to overspend on a role when someone's not qualified and or bringing what they should be bringing to the table because you just don't want to have that difficult conversation of lowering that person's wage when they don't deserve that certain wage. So it doesn't reflect favorably on your financials or on your profitability if you need to go and then hire someone else to help make ends meet. It does not make sense. So obviously that conversation's a blow, and it's a difficult conversation to have when someone's telling you that you're going to be paid less essentially. And I, in the back of my mind, really hope that that person would leave. But honestly, this is such a learning. Like I should have had the guts to tell her that it was no longer working and let her go instead of doing this whole murky middle thing and dancing around it. So she decided to stay and we reduced her wage, and it was fine for a few months, kind of business as usual. She was still doing things, and again, I was still checking things and all this stuff. And then randomly in one of my launches, in the middle of one of my launches, she just ghosts me. She stops replying on Slack, she blocks me on social media, the whole nine. This came out of left field, but obviously really stressful at the time because I was like, what the hell? If you didn't want to work with me, totally fine. I would have respected that. But just tell me, because I spent a lot of time mentoring them, guiding them, working with them, all this stuff. But on my end, I realized that I should have also not dragged out this conversation. I should have let her go a long time ago. And I should have had those difficult conversations and given feedback and very direct, clear feedback right away. So lots of lessons in this learning, but makes for good stories now. And so hopefully you can avoid this mistake in your own business. That being said, I took that situation, I learned what I could out of it, and now I'm proud to say that I give really candid, transparent feedback to my team. I still do it in a very respectful, positive manner, but I tell them when mistakes are made or when something happens because people don't improve, they don't get better in their career unless you give them that feedback. And I've learned from this situation because I then had another team member after that where the ball was just constantly being dropped. Things were not being done by the deadline and or it would be done incorrectly. And I had to spend a lot of my time chasing this person and redoing a good portion of their work. And I realized that their capability and skill set wasn't what I needed from the job because I had that foresight and just that experience from the past person that ghosted me. And so I let them go. And for the first 3 months they were in the role, I kind of made excuses for them because I was like, oh, they're just learning. Maybe I wasn't clear enough. But you know what? I've realized since then I have really detailed SOPs. I have I had like weekly check-ins with the person. And I also have a lot going on. So if I can manage my work and also their work, you know what I mean? Like it can be done. And a lot of the times we make excuses for people, and instead we should just see them where they're at, and it's either a fit or it's not. I realized since then I need an A team, especially because I have such ambitious growth targets this year, and it just wasn't a fit on both sides. So I had a very transparent and respectful decision for them. I'm really proud of myself because I addressed it up front. I didn't drag it on, and I handled it in a really empathetic manner. I suggested other roles to that person. I mentored them. I looked over their resume, all this stuff, and we parted on very amicable terms. But I just wanted to say that when it isn't working, you do need to address it head on, because again, the business needs what it needs, and it needs someone that can actually do the role in a great way. So, lessons here. First of all, finding good people is tough. You probably have heard this or realized this before. And moving forward, I am going to spend a lot more time to do reference checks to really ensure I fully understand their capability and their skill sets, and probably do a 3-month probation period too, where I just figure out how fast they're able to pick things up and all that stuff. Secondly, set expectations up front. It is on me that people don't meet deadlines because I probably let it slide, gave the signal that that kind of behavior is okay. So you want to make sure you set expectations up front, like deadlines need to be met. If they're not met and you foresee something slipping, then please give me a heads up. We also need to talk about the quality of work that's expected. Like set that all from the get-go so that the person knows what the standard and the bar is. There's no surprises on either end. Thirdly, give constructive feedback so folks can improve. I talked about this a little bit already, but someone cannot improve unless you give them that feedback. So don't feel bad about it or shy away from it. It's just simply a matter of this wasn't up to standard. This is what you should do next time. And by giving that feedback, you also mentor, coach, and that person gets to improve. And last but not least, if it's not a fit, let them go. It does nobody any favors by delaying this. It doesn't help you. It doesn't help them in their career. So don't delay this conversation. There's a way to do it where it's still empathetic and you can help them find a new role and all this stuff. It doesn't have to be this whole dramatic thing. It's kind of like amicable breakup, right? So those are my lessons in terms of hiring. And last but not least, I saved the juiciest one for last, but let's talk about my $10,000 mistake. I've talked about it on the podcast before, but it's such a crazy and painful story, quite honestly, that it really deserves another mention. And there are a lot of lessons here that I think are helpful in really making tough decisions and doing what needs to be done. So please learn from my mistake and do not throw $10,000 into the water. So basically, what happened, if you haven't heard about this before, I hired this PR agency off of a recommendation. And first and foremost, I will acknowledge right off the bat, I should have done more due diligence before I decided to work with them, and also trusted my gut when something, like we had a sales call and there were a couple things that I was wondering about, but because it came from a recommendation, I was like, you know what, it's probably fine. Anyways, so I decided to work with them, pay them $10K. And there was just red flag after red flag. And I just kept going until it was like the final huge red flag. But here's what the red flags were or what happened. So we do the sales call, decide to work with them, pay the $10K, and then we have an intro meeting kickoff call. The person in charge of my account and kind of like the founder of the business, she completely ghosts me. Does not show up to the call, doesn't give me a heads up. I'm like on the call waiting 15 minutes in, decide to leave. First and foremost, I have never done that ever to a client. And if I ever did that, I would be completely mortified. And I remember her reaction after was just like, oh, I'm so sorry. I was traveling, but it wasn't even like the type of reaction I feel like I would have given. Like I would have been like, oh my God, let me give you this or that or whatever. And not that she needs to give me stuff, but you know what I mean? It's just like the attitude around it. She was just so blasé about it. So that was the first red flag. Second red flag is they did my pitch sheet and they sent it to me for approval or just to look it over. And I literally went in Canva because they did it on Canva and I had to edit it because there were spelling mistakes, grammar mistakes. And I was like, oh my God, what am I doing? Why am I doing this? What is this quality of work? But I had to fix it because I didn't want this sent out with my name on it, with my brand, and have it reflect poorly on me. So I was in there literally typing away trying to fix it. And then finally, the straw that broke the camel's back, or the final huge red flag, was the fact that I got an email in my inbox one day pitching me, Selina, to be on Recloseted Radio. Let me just pause. Yeah, so basically, you're listening to Recloseted Radio right now. That is my own podcast. So this PR agency that I paid $10,000 for pitched me to be on my own goddamn podcast. And not only that, I opened the pitch email because I was like, there's no way in this world that this happened. But it did happen. Not only that, in the email, my name is spelled incorrectly. They misrepresent Recloseted what we do. They also pitched me as a woman of color without me having consented to it or being aware that's the pitch angle they were going for. And so that was the final straw. And I was like, we cannot work together anymore. I can't deal with this. And thankfully, they had just started the work. I think they just sent out like a few pitches. But at that point, I was like, we need to cut ties. This cannot go forward. And I have told this story to friends, other entrepreneurs, people in PR, and every single time people's jaw like hits the floor because they're like, what the heck? This is so unprofessional. There's people out there that are doing things like this. Like I cannot make this up, right? So anyways, I fired them. They barely did any work. And then the process of getting my money back was insane. They fought me tooth and nail for everything. And honestly, if I fucked up that bad with a client, I would be like, take my money, please. And what can I do? Like, tell me, like, I'm so sorry we did something like that. And I feel like this is the time where people's true colors show. Like, there was no real accountability taken. She was so blasé about this whole experience. And I was shocked because I would never do something like this. And I know for a lot of my entrepreneurial friends, they were equally shocked because there's a standard of business that people expect. And some people just aren't at that standard, it seems. So anyways, all this to say, I hope that sharing this allows you to not make the same mistake. So here are my learnings from this, right? My takeaways. It's not just a rant sash, like we need to learn from this. So first and foremost, do your own due diligence before hiring someone, whether it's a contractor, a team member, whatever. Make sure they can actually do the work that they're promising you they can. And especially if they're promising you results as well, like really see if they can do it. Look into their quality of work. There's lots of bad service providers out there, and you can kind of tell in their emails or social media captions or their websites, like if you're finding spelling errors there or things aren't formatted correctly. It's just the little things, right? Like don't ignore that. And then secondly, referrals are helpful, but at the end of the day, it's still on you. You are the person hiring these people, so you still need to do your due diligence. And sometimes people get referral bonuses too. So they may not actually have your best interest at heart. They actually may just want a kickback. So you need to keep an eye out for yourself. And then last but not least, I am proud that I fired them and I didn't let this continue. But if it's not a fit and if there's red flags, don't ignore it. Don't keep going. So I am happy. Obviously, I fired them before they did any more work. But honestly, I probably should have fired them after that initial call and slash like never worked with them. But after that initial call of ghosting them, I should have known like this is not the level of professionalism that I want to be associated with my business slash not the type of person I want to be working with. So all this to say, I hope that being this candid and this raw with you is helpful for you. And I don't want this episode to scare you either, because these are just growing pains and things that happen as you grow and scale your business. I'm sure if you talk to any other entrepreneur, they'll have similar stories and similar things that happen. But hopefully learning from my experiences can prevent you from making some of these mistakes. And being a business owner means putting your business first and making hard decisions, like I keep emphasizing in this episode. And it can be hard, but the good news is that in the process, you grow a lot as a person as well. In my personal life, I feel like so much more confident and so much better at setting boundaries as well, because it's like, hey, I like fire these people. I like have made $10,000 mistakes. Like if I don't have time to go to brunch, like that's the least of my worries, you know? So you grow so much as a person as well. And last but not least, I wanted to say, if you are looking to grow and scale your brand this year and increase your sales, you can check out our business consulting services. We are accepting a few new clients for this next quarter, and we can really work together to figure out what your action plan is and really help you execute it. I promise you, we have a lot more professionalism than that PR agency I fired. So you can definitely jump on a consultation call, see if it's a fit to work together. You can check everything out at recloseted.com/biz, and the link will be in the show notes for you as well. But you've got this. Like, I don't want this episode to scare you, but instead I want you to listen to it. Hopefully you have some of your own stories. And if you want to share them in the YouTube video for this podcast episode, I would definitely welcome it. But everyone goes through things like this. But the point is to come out on the other side with learnings, with takeaways, and then you can be better and act better next time.